7.62 goes through soft body armor like a hot knife goes through butter. There is absolutely no resistance whatsoever. It's just that high speed just eats straight through the Kevlar. He fired 18 times in less than 5 seconds, and he hit me 14 times with either bullets or shrapnel.
Welcome to Going In Blind. I'm your host, Zach Tidwell, and today I'm speaking with former police officer and member of Australia's Special Tasks and Rescue Group, Derrick McManus. And to everyone at home, thank you for listening. Please take a second to help me grow the show so that I can keep delivering these conversations week after week for years to come. Subscribe, rate, and review the show in whatever podcasting app you're using right now, and check out the show notes to follow me on social media and YouTube as well. When you share your favorite episodes, tag me and use the hashtag GoingInBlind. You can also join my mailing list at zachtidwell.net. And if you know someone you think I should talk to, have them send me an email at contact.goinginblind@gmail.com. Derrick, welcome to the show, man.
Really good to be here, Zach.
Yeah, this is, I would say, the first time that I've gotten connected with someone to come on here to tell a specific story and work to a pivotal event in your life. So I wanted to start maybe here before we get into the story. How did you get into police work? Because that is that draws in a certain kind of person, and I'm always curious, like, do you have a veteran background? What's the story there?
So it's always this question always gets me right into an embarrassing situation, and you've hit the nail on the head straight into it.
Well, that's the best way to do it. Get you embarrassed off the bat. Yeah.
Absolutely, on the back foot. So most people go into policing because they have a passion for policing and want to be a policeman. My story is that my brother was my hero. He's 2 years older than me, and whatever Brian wanted to do, Derrick wanted to do. And Brian, when we were young, I don't know what age it was, was it 12 and 14 or something like that? Brian said, I want to become a policeman. And Derrick said, I want to become a policeman. And all my family said, well, you just want to be a policeman because Brian does. No, it's my passion and I really like it. Yeah, it's nice that Brian wants to. Well, my brother changed his mind and became a butcher. And if I
What
had
a
changed my mind,
change.
yeah, absolutely. But if I had changed my mind and not become a policeman, everybody would have said, see, I told you so. And so that's how I became a policeman.
That is so
No, isn't that
funny.
sad? Isn't that sad? However, having said that, let me just put it into perspective. I loved being a cop. Absolutely loved it. It was brilliant. But after about maybe 10, 12 years, I started getting bored of being a police officer. It would give me lots and lots of challenges, lots and lots of diversity up until that period. But now I was in sort of a rut. It was the same thing over and over. And I was looking to go out and find a different job. I was quite prepared to do that. And somebody said, why don't you go and join Star Group? It's a section of the police which we deal with high-risk arrest, hostage siege, counter-terrorism, helicopter operations,
Like American
VIP.
SWAT almost.
Well, it's a combination of SWAT, Navy SEALs, the Marines, Delta Force, because we cover that full gambit. SWAT don't do counter-terrorist operations,
Yeah.
but the SEALs and Delta Force do all those. So we combined everything, but we also did search and rescue. So cliff rescue, cave rescue, mine rescue. And when somebody said to me, why don't you, go and join Star Group? It just seems to suit your personality. I've just gone, not sure, but it sounds interesting. Can't think of anything else to do. And that became my passion. Once I got in there, once I experienced everything that was going on, it just became my passion, and it was sensational. I absolutely loved it. So it started out not quite the right way, but I still found an absolute passion for it in the end.
So that is part of the Australian military?
No, police.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah. So it's a police section. And to give you context, I was a sniper, I was underwater recovery diver, and I was trained by our military SAS, which is Navy SEALs uh, equivalent, the British SAS, your
Yep.
Delta Force. I was trained by our military SAS in counterterrorism, and then brought those skills back to policing so that we could do entries, we could take on terrorists, we could take on the vast majority of people out there.
That's very interesting. I've never heard of that. I was down in Australia for a little bit on my second deployment, and we trained with the Australian Defense Force out in the outback and stuff. But we didn't, it's not like we had a deep dive into the culture or anything like that. But I had no idea that that was a facet of the police in Australia. That's pretty cool. And how,
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, no, go for it. Yeah, it's a fascinating area, and I absolutely loved it.
So you said that was like 10, 12-ish years in, right?
Yep. Yeah,
Is that what you were doing when you got shot?
that's what I was doing when I got shot. Yeah, absolutely. And
Okay.
for your listeners, I was shot 14 times, just to give you an insight into what that was.
Yeah, and that's I want to pick that apart and get into the story behind all of that. So what's go ahead, set the scene.
Okay, so I'd been in Star Group for about 5 years, and so I was starting to get my skills into a really good place. Um, I had also uh, been away and did the SAS training as well. And on this day, 3rd of May 1994, so just on 30 years ago, my section were asked to go and arrest a guy for fraud offences. Now, fraud offences are not normally associated with violence, but we knew this guy's history. We knew he had potential to be violent. He'd never done it before, so we still had to look after the civil libertarians and do it without a lot of force. But we knew the potential was there, so they asked Star Group to go and arrest him. And when we rocked up, we knocked on the front door. He didn't answer, but we knew he was inside. We knew he should be answering the door. So we knocked, we called, and again, he didn't answer. At this stage, I'd moved down the side of the house to check out a glass sliding door just to see whether we could get in through that door without a massive delay. Like if we went in through the front door, we had to pop the screen door with a tool for that. We then had to use a battering ram. We then had to file in one after the other, and that's noisy, creates an opportunity for the offender to respond or be prepared.
And can we
So I
pause here
went
for a
down.
second?
Yeah,
What
sure.
was this in an urban environment or are you guys out in the country?
It wouldn't have made any difference because that tactic is exactly the same, but we were out in the country.
Okay.
We're about an hour away from the CBD of Adelaide in South Australia. So
Okay.
we're about an hour into the country. But when he didn't answer the second time, I've gone down the side of the house to look at a glass sliding door. And if we were able to use that, it would be more efficient, more effective, safer, faster, all those tick box things. But as I went down to check out that glass sliding door, he started shooting and I was the target. And you'd appreciate the weaponry. He was using an SKK, Chinese military weapon, semi-automatic, 7.62. He fired 18 times in less than 5 seconds, and he hit me 14 times with either bullets or shrapnel. So there's definitely a few pieces of shrapnel. There's definitely a couple of injuries where we can't say it was shrapnel or bullets, but there was at least 9 bullets that absolutely entered my body, stayed in my body, or passed straight through.
Jesus. Were you wearing soft armor or did you guys have plate carriers?
We had plate carriers as well. I had, but remember, it was 30 years ago. So I had a plate on my front and a plate on my back. They weighed 7 kilos each back in the day. They're much lighter these days.
Jesus.
As
Wow.
well as the soft body armor as well. So the soft body armor was probably weighing in at about 12 or 14 kilos at the time. So that's a fair weight, as well as weaponry, as well as equipment. all on my upper body. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, and I guess back then your plates were probably literally just steel plates.
No, they were ceramic.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
still massively heavy. And
Jesus.
one of those ceramic plates took a direct hit, fractured but didn't puncture.
And the rest was elsewhere in your body.
Yeah, there were a couple of bullets that went in through my stomach, so that came through the soft body armor. And as you'll probably appreciate, 7.62 goes through soft body armor like a hot knife goes through butter. There is absolutely no resistance whatsoever. It's just that high speed just eats straight through the Kevlar. There were 2 bullets in my left thigh. There was 1 bullet that broke my radius on my left arm, severed the artery, damaged nerve, stretched tendon. So I had a severed radial artery in my left arm. There was a piece of shrapnel that lodged in my right wrist, and that severed the ulnar artery. 1 bullet went through my right Achilles tendon, took out 80% of the thickness of my Achilles for about an inch, inch and a half. 3 bullets or bits of shrapnel skipped across my left calf. 1 bullet or bit of shrapnel went in through my right knee. There was a direct hit onto a piece of equipment. I usually say piece of equipment to most people, but you'd appreciate that I had a drop holster on my left thigh carrying extra magazine pouches. So a direct hit into the magazine pouch on my left thigh. So it was a third hit on the left thigh, but that one didn't penetrate. The ceramic plate took a direct hit. And then, uh, and I'm going to ask you a question before I tell you this last one. The groin flaps, the flap that pulls down out of the vest and just covers your groin, is that something you would use on a regular basis, or were you like most Australians where we go, oh, groin flap, that's a pain in the neck. It's hard to walk,
We
it's hard to run.
we had them, and I mean, realistically, against 7.62, that's not going to do shit because it's soft armor. But I didn't see combat, so I wasn't at risk of having my nuts
Yeah,
blown
right.
off. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, it is soft body armor. It is thinner than the rest of the vest, but I would always pull that groin flap down. The beauty of it is that it was actually mobile. It was so loose that a 7.62 hit that groin flap. Because it was loose and it was able to absorb the pressure, it didn't go through the groin flap, and there was no damage in behind there. Right now, that is an absolute bonus. So it's a story I love telling to military, to police, because nobody likes their groin flat down. It gets in the way when you're trying to get in and out of the car. If you have to climb a fence, if you have to run, it's just in the way. But I'm sure that groin flap, well, isn't just it certainly protected my manhood, but
Yeah.
quite possibly saved my life.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, if it had hit an artery again, you already had one artery
Yep.
hit, like that would have been it.
Well, yeah, I had 2 arteries hit. And
Jesus.
just the background to the 2 arteries hit. The 2 arteries were hit, and I was lying on the ground, fully conscious, for 3 hours before they could get me out. So your listeners will put that into context. Normally, if you sever an artery, it's minutes and you're gone. For whatever reason, I had 2 severed arteries, and the bleeding was contained. Not because I did anything first aid wise, it was just my body responded in a way that just didn't have the normal flow of blood out of an artery.
Yeah. I
Cool.
believe when I went through like combat casualty care in the Marines that they told us, as base numbers. I think it's 30 seconds for a carotid artery, 60 seconds. I think it might have been 60 seconds. Maybe 60 seconds for a femoral artery. And I mean that's basically what you have to before you bleed out. And I
Yeah.
guess with your team, so I got a couple questions here. What sounds like, I mean, he was waiting on you guys. Was he barricaded in there?
He When we drove up, we had to drive along the country road to get to his house. He and his wife were standing in the kitchen as we were driving up,
Oh,
and he started preparing himself at that point. He
okay.
said to his wife, they're coming to arrest me. I'm going to take some of them as well. And so he started preparing. So as we were going to come through that front door, he was actually standing in a place and he was waiting for us to come through, armed with the 7.62. And as we came through, he just wanted to pick us off. As I appeared down the side of the house, he just happened to be standing in a logistically fortuitous place, and he was able to see the front door and that particular side door. And he just turned and started shooting.
Jeez. Well, and with you laying there for 3 hours, is that because your team was still engaging him and he was back in the house, or why were you stuck there for so long?
So when he fired at me, I fired back. And all the guys at the front of the house, so we were lined up across the front of the house, and I'd been on the corner and I saw the door, and we're all always encouraged to go and check something out. If you think it's possible, have a look, come back and tell people there's a better entry point here. Come and let's do it this way. We had our primary entry, but we always look for that better option as a secondary. And so everybody was lined up across the front of the house, and when the shooting started, and this is on video, on YouTube, on my website. And you can see the guys, and I smile wryly as I'm telling this story. You can see the guys, and they're standing across the front of the house, and the sergeant's knocking on the door, and the shooting starts. And you can see the sergeant's head just sort of cock a little bit, and he goes, "Oh, that doesn't sound good." Without saying anything, you can just see it written all over his face. "Oh, that doesn't sound good." And he steps it back in behind a brick pillar just to make an assessment. And then you can see him look at the other guys, and there's not a word said again. And everybody at the same time just goes, "Well, this is not a safe place to be." So they start moving away from the house. As soon as they start moving away from the house, I call out, "I'm hit, I'm hit." So they've gone away from protection. And once you've gone away from protection, you don't stop in no man's land. You get to a secure point, then you make a reassessment, see if you can come back, whatever it is. Because of things the shooter was doing, the guys had a realistic expectation that if they tried to come back in, he would just pick them off as they were coming back. The sergeant had lots of discussions, did contingency planning to try to get back into me, but it was just too dangerous. And so they had to call for backup. We were an hour out of Adelaide. Our backup was an hour the other side of Adelaide, doing rescue training. And so they had to get back into Adelaide, regroup, get into the helicopter, get into land vehicles, and get out to where we were. So I was lying on the ground for 3 hours waiting for them, and I was fully conscious for all but the last 15 minutes of that 3 hours.
And you weren't tourniqueting yourself or anything?
I didn't have a tourniquet with me. And
Wow.
I had one hand. Both legs were damaged, although I didn't realize my right leg was damaged. My left thigh was damaged. My stomach, I could feel that I'd been hit in the stomach, but I didn't exactly know how many. No, I wasn't able to do anything. I did the basic first aid. So prior to the shooting, I thought about it and I said to myself, if I get shot, what do I want to do? Mentally, controlling my mindset and controlling panic, and what do I want to do physically? So the 4 things that I knew I needed to do mentally as well as physically. The first was to control panic, not let panic take control of the situation. I needed to control shock, the body's physiological response to physical or psychological trauma. I needed to slow down my heart rate, and I needed to slow down my breathing, because I knew that would slow down my bleeding and I'd survive for a little while longer. So when I fired back, I then I'd fallen to the ground. I then rolled away from where I'd been shot, because he had stopped shooting at me, but I knew that that potential was still there. So I rolled out of the line of fire. I then managed to get to my feet. Now, despite all these injuries that I've got, 2 bullets in my left thigh, 1 through my right Achilles tendon, I wasn't feeling pain. And I was able to get to my feet and stagger around the corner, but I only gone about 7 or 8 meters. And I knew I just needed to lean against the wall, gather my thoughts, and work out what I was going to do next. But I was in a comfortable position mentally, in that I'd done the planning beforehand. If I get shot, how do I want to respond? So I had some anticipation I may get shot. So it didn't hit me with a massive shock that it does some people. Oh my God, I knew this was a possibility, but I never thought about it in reality. I had thought about it. If I do get shot, how do I want to respond? So I was in a good position mentally. Go for it.
Was that your first time in a firefight?
First time that bullets had fired. I had been in a wrestling match with a guy with a pistol that was trying to shoot us. And the pistol was broken, so we'd pulled the car over. He'd pulled a pistol, pointed at my partner's chest and started pulling the trigger. The pistol was broken. It wouldn't fire on double action. It would only fire on single action. So we got into a wrestling match because that was, what my partner did. And immediately it was just
Yeah.
grab the barrel and push the barrel away. He's called on me. I've jumped into the car from the other side. We got into a wrestling match. And he has called out to his girlfriend, cock the gun, cock the gun. She has
Mm.
scrambled over the top of us during wrestling, and she's cocked the gun. And when she cocked the gun, I put my thumb between the hammer and the gun to stop the hammer falling onto the firing pin. And we continued to wrestle, and he eventually gave up. So I've been in a wrestling match with a fully, well, not fully operational, but with a weapon that could be fired.
Well,
So
in
I'd
full,
been,
yeah, with the intent for sure.
yeah, absolutely. So I'd been in that situation. I'd been in that intensity. And when I was planning for the fact that I may get shot, I had to look back at where I'd been successful in my life before, as well as where I'd stuffed up in different things, and draw lessons from both of those and say, how did I do well in that one? Why did I stuff up in that one? Okay, if I get shot, what would I like to do as an absolutely perfect response? And so we work out what perfection is. But I also said to myself, I've stuffed up quite a few times before. So if this turns out to not be a perfect response, what does absolute chaos look like? And how would I manage it if it turns to chaos? And as it turns out, it was pretty close to chaos. Um, but I was able to still manage to control panic, control shock, slow down the heart rate, slow down the breathing. And by being able to do those, it lowered my stress levels and raised my level of rational thinking. Okay, and I was able to put plans in place to be able to manage my body, manage the situation, and manage essentially a conversation between the shooter and I without words actually being exchanged. I better explain that, but I'll let you ask a question if you've got a couple there, but I'll come back to that point in a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously the presence of mind is huge here, but do you remember even registering? Obviously, I mean, your body was failing you from the places that you were hit. Your arm got broken, your Achilles was taken out, so your leg was basically taken out from underneath you when you fell. Other than that, other than those literal failures of your body to function the way that it should, do you remember registering that you were shot even?
Interesting question, and there are two parts to that. So as I approached that glass sliding door just to check it out, and he started shooting, I suddenly started falling to the ground. And I had absolutely no idea why. Didn't feel the pain, didn't feel the impact, and I didn't even hear the sound of gunfire. But as I was halfway to the ground, I started to notice the small round holes in the glass door, and then I heard the sound of gunfire in the distance, but I still hadn't felt any impact or any pain. But as I was falling, I've rationalized to myself, I must be falling because I'm getting shot. Everything just seems to add up that way. I've fallen to the ground, and when I'm on the ground, he's still shooting me, and he shoots me twice in the left thigh. Now, I feel the impact of these two bullets. Now, 18 bullets are fired in less than 5 seconds. These two bullets seem to take 30 seconds because time just slowed right down. And these two bullets seem to take 30 seconds. And I remember the individual impact, but again, there was no pain. And it was like a sledgehammer was just absolutely hammering into my thigh. And then a shockwave went up through my body really slowly all the way up to my head. And then that shockwave came back down again, down to the point of impact. And then I felt the second individual impact and that shockwave up, shockwave back down. Um, 18 bullets in less than 5 seconds, and you can hear the sound of gunfire in the video that's on website or YouTube. But it seemed to take 30 seconds, but there was still no pain. And even though I've been shot, I've got massive injuries, I've rolled to my right, managed to get to my feet despite all those injuries, but I still wasn't feeling massive pain. Nobody can explain to me why. Lots of theories, doctors can give
Adrenaline.
possibilities. Adrenaline could be one of it. It could be just mentally overwhelmed. The nerves could have been shocked by the speed of the bullets going in and seared by the lots and lots of theories as to why it might be. I don't proclaim to have any answer to that, but I know what some of the possibilities are.
Yeah. With him shooting 18 times, I guess I would imagine, because I'm curious here, obviously he stopped firing. Well, how big is a magazine in one of those SKKs? Do you know?
Yeah, back in the day, it was a 30 round, and he had, and they are the banana mags, and he had two of those strapped, taped together.
Okay.
So as soon as he ran through the 30, he would just turn it around. For the entire 3 hours I was on the ground, he just continually fired. And so it was these banana mags taped together, and just turn them around, put it in, and keep on firing. For the 3 hours I was on the ground, the only time he stopped firing, and this is my summation assumption, the only time he stopped firing was when he had to reload those magazines. And he probably had, or 8 magazines, 30 round mags.
Yeah, I mean that's why I was asking. I was like, okay, did he have to stop and reload? Did he think that he had killed you when you dropped? Like, obviously
Yeah,
you'll
no,
never
so,
know, but
well, you never know what was running through his mind, but, you make assumptions. So when
yeah.
he shot at me, the only reason he stopped, I believe, the only reason he stopped is because I started shooting back at him. And he fires 18 times. I then fire 13 times back at him. And that's an interesting little snippet segue. Um, I I couldn't see him. I could hear the sound of gunfire. It was dark in the house. It was light outside, so can't see into the house. The door's like a mirror, but I could hear where the sound of gunfire was coming from. So I just lined up my pistol, Stick 9mm, and I just fired back in that direction. And I consciously thought to myself, I can't see him. I just need to get some rounds down range so that he will feel he's in danger and he'll stop firing and take cover, and I'll have time to do something. As the video shows, as much as I wanted to fire 6 or 7 times, I actually fired 13 times. So I describe it as I just got a little bit excited. But when I fired, he stopped, and then I rolled to the right, and then he started firing again.
Mm. Is that all you guys were carrying, even as a tactical unit at least, in to move on a what you believe to be an armed target was handguns?
A little bit more history to that. We've been involved with this guy twice before, and we had taken his firearms off of him. He had appealed to the court to say that police shouldn't have my firearms, but you can't give them back to me because I haven't got a firearms license at the moment. So you can't give them back to me, but my wife has a firearms license, so you can give them back to her. And so he got them back again. We went, and the second time we took the firearms back, because we appealed to the court and, made sense. But we only got half the firearms. But we were assuming, wrongly, that in all those interactions that we had with him, he hadn't actually been violent. Now, the team on the ground, my team, we wanted to take different weapons. We wanted to take submachine guns, or um, um, short military weapons, 5.56. And I can't think of the term I want to use,
Carbines?
but yeah, carbines, that's it. We want to take them in, but there was a decision made in hierarchy that no, you just go in with pistols. We weren't happy, but the hierarchy had made that decision. We had
Yeah.
shotguns in the car, but obviously, at that point, shotguns weren't available to us.
Yeah. How many guys were on your team that were there?
There were four other guys, so five of us all up, and we had one guy there with a video camera. So you will see the footage of us, and I smiled wryly again because I take the piss out of this guy all the time, the videographer, because he's followed us in one of the cars. He's got out, he's taken cover, and he's filming the front of the house, and you can see me at the corner of the house. But as I move down the side of the house, I move out a camera shot. And so you see the guys at the front of the house, but you don't see me actually getting shot. Now, I berate this guy because if he'd just turned that camera a little bit, maybe 10 degrees, he would have got me down the side of the house and he would have had video of it. And I wanted that video. And I
Yeah.
have given him shit for so long about just not being a great videographer. He missed the action. Um, but the irony was 30 years ago, um, he was a police officer. He was armed only with a video camera. He didn't have a weapon with him on that day.
That's wild to think, especially I bet he was shitting a brick when he starts hearing round blasting off and all
Yeah,
he's got is a camera.
yeah, absolutely. And the other side of that for him is that he didn't have star group training. He hadn't been operational for a number of years. He was a great guy, one of my really good friends. We used to play basketball together, so I knew he was a great guy. But he'd never been exposed to our training or the fact that he may be in a situation where he's going to be fired at. But despite his initial exposure to that being a natural event, he kept that video going and he captured absolutely essential footage, and more particularly the sounds of gunfire. So I put him down as being one of the bravest people there because without the training, he has kept on functioning and really, really good operative. Obviously, the other guys that I was with, very brave as well. But the man was untrained, so you've got to give credit where credit's due.
Yeah, and I mean, you don't know how you're going to react in that, especially unarmed in a situation like that. That's huge. But
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
so you get hit, you roll, you're up on the wall outside of the house.
Yep.
What's you mentioned
Yeah,
a
yeah.
conversation earlier.
Yeah, so the conversation was not a chat or anything like that. The conversation was, as I've rolled away, I've got to my feet, and you can hear on the video, I call out, I'm hit, I'm hit. My mates are scrambling to find a place of security to be able to get back to me. Depending on the video you watch, you can hear them calling out, call for backup. Derrick's down. We've got to get to Derrick. Derrick, where are you? And there are a couple of different versions of the video out there. One cuts off early before that comes in. Um, so I call out, I'm hit, I'm hit. The guys are scrambling for a place to go. I go around the corner and I lean against the wall. But as I lean against the wall, my forearm's been hit in two places. There's no support for my wrist. And as I lean against the wall, my my hand collapses back along my forearm. And I am indicating here with my other hand that it collapses and folds backwards along my forearm as I lean against the wall. Um, and at that point, I call out to my mates, I'm hit, I'm hurt, I need help. Now, I know that he inside has heard that, but I needed to get that message to my mates. But they are now so far away from me, they didn't actually hear me calling it out.
Did you guys not have
Um,
radios?
oh, Zach, you're hitting on all the points that embarrass me here, which I really embrace, and I'm not shy about embracing this. So another segue to another story about my history. I was the first person in Star Group to experiment with um, boom microphones. So prior to me experimenting with boom microphones, we just had radios on our hip. This is 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It's back in the old day. We just had a radio on our hip, and the radio had to be turned up loud so that we could hear it. But then the offender would hear it as well. So I got together with a guy in radio section. He was developing a boom microphone, asked me to be involved, and I've gone, yeah, no problems, I'll be in that. So we experimented with boom microphones, so that had an earpiece and a boom microphone, the offenders wouldn't be able to hear us, and that was working well. And then we went to voice operated, so that we didn't have to have a press to talk. We went to voice operated. You could select it and deselect it. So I was doing all this experimenting, but we had to test the radio. So whenever we were training or had a lunch break or we were in a different environment, hills, buildings, whatever it is, I'd always be saying to the guys, hey, listen, I need to test the radios. Would you turn your radio on? Would you? And everybody goes, oh, Derek and those bloody radios again.
Yeah.
And so, I just got this little chip on my shoulder. Now, I was always had my radio, always. I knew it was absolutely invaluable. As we go out of the car at this job, I was with a partner that I hadn't worked with very often, and he didn't know my get out of the car, my exit the car routine. So I would always have my radio sitting on the center console. And as we pull up somewhere, my routine was to turn the car off, hook the keys onto my belt, grab my radio as I'm stepping out of the car, put the radio onto my belt and hook that on as I'm also pulling my gun out of the drop holster at the same time. It was a routine that I'd practiced and I was very, very familiar with. But as I was getting out of the car, my new partner has just seen my radio sitting on the center console. And he said, Derek, aren't you going to take your radio? Now, the chip on my shoulder has gone, oh, okay, Derek, day to be brave, day to be brazen. No, I don't need my radio. And I left it in the car. It was a small location. And I said to him, no, we'll be so close. We'll be able to shout if we really need to. So I didn't take my radio on the day. So thank you for hitting the second point where I'm really embarrassed about this job.
Well, I mean, you're own it. People make mistakes, man. That's just wow.
And you just nailed it on the head. You've got to own it. If you don't own it, if you try to cover it up, if you try to be shy about it, if you try to hide it, you can never actually address it and be a better performer. And nobody will learn from your actions. So I own it. I made a mistake. I'm not the only one to have ever made a mistake in my life, and I've made many others. But unless we own it, and I talk about taking responsibility on 4 levels now, and that is one of the primary starts. First level of responsibility, take responsibility for your choices. Second one is take responsibility for your behaviors. And then it goes on after that. But we've got to own it. We've got to own those things. And then address changing the behavior.
Yeah, you aren't going to grow without doing that. I mean, you can lie to
No.
yourself, but and other people are going to see right through your bullshit too. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
and there's strength in owning it and being able to admit that, and that takes a lot of maturity, and people recognize that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the more we normalize it, the more people will go, oh, everybody else is quite open about making mistakes. I can be open about my mistakes as well. Whereas if we think everybody else is covering theirs up, then we don't want to be vulnerable. So going back to the conversations, I've called out, I'm hit, I'm hurt, I need help. The guys didn't hear it. Where I was at that time isn't a safe spot. And I start moving to the next corner of the house to try and find a safe spot or a way to get back to the vehicles and get back to the guys. I've only taken about 3 or 4 steps away from that wall. My knees collapse and I fall to my knees and I'm crawling along on my knees. My body's getting weaker. I fall to my hands and knees, crawling along on my hands and knees. And then I look up and I see a small fence in front of me. There's no way in the world I'm going to have the energy or capacity to climb that fence. And I just collapse to the ground, roll onto my back, and that's where I stay for about the next 3 hours. And there's a couple of things that happen before I get to this next point that I'm going to make. But as I'm lying on my back, I start thinking, and this is where my emotions have come down and my rational thinking has come up. And I start thinking to myself, I've called out, I'm hit, I'm hurt. I've also called out that I need help. So he is probably thinking he's hurt. I can come out and get him again. And that was one of my greatest concerns, that I am now in a really vulnerable spot. I can't get up. I've got my pistol in my hand, but one arm is completely destroyed. And I'm worried about him coming out to get me again, coming out to hunt me. And so I very deliberately call out as loud as I can so that he is hearing it. And he's obviously not shooting. He's probably reloading mags or getting up into the roof, whatever he was doing at the time. But there was no shooting. And I've called out really loudly so that he could potentially hear me. I'm hit, I'm hurt, but I can still shoot. And that was
Yeah.
trying to play with his psychology. I don't know whether he heard it or not, but it made me feel better. And that's one of the most important things we can do, make ourselves feel safe and have a sense of optimism for the future.
Yeah, especially in a situation like that where, I mean, that's beyond vulnerable. You're stuck there. And I mean, you're bleeding out and
Yeah.
you're leveraging whatever leverage you might have, whatever. If it's the psychological game, you've got numbers. If he can hear that, that might back him away from coming out the door. And
Yeah, absolutely. Psychological is the first thing we need to employ whenever we're going into battle. Our own psychology is the most important, managing our own emotions. And then if we can get into the heads of our opponents, whether it be business opponent, sporting opponent, or as we talk about military confrontational opponents, if we can get into their heads and make them doubt themselves, then we have the advantage.
yeah, and at this point, when you get out there and you can't make it over the fence, are you just behind concealment at this point, or do you actually have cover?
No, I
Neither.
have followed. I've got neither.
Okay.
Absolutely. So I have just followed the house around, looking to get to the next corner as quickly as possible. So when I've collapsed, I'm directly underneath the kitchen window. And when he starts shooting again, and he's shooting on this side of the house. When he started shooting, I felt like he was standing in the kitchen and shooting out. And I was right below the kitchen window and I was flat on the ground. And the first thought that ran through my head is if he looks out through that window, he's going to have a chance of seeing me down here and he may just lean out of the window and start shooting me. So I have angled myself up 45 degrees against the wall to lower that visual profile to give myself the best chance of concealment. But basically, I've just collapsed to the ground, the only place I could. And I was very fortunate in that when I collapsed, um, I was able to look back along the path where I come from, and that was the most logical place for him to come from if he was going to come and try and shoot me. So I was able to cover that most logical place of attack.
And over the course of these next 3 hours, I mean, who ultimately ends the threat? How does all that occur? I know I feel like we've kind of danced around the conversation unless I know you said it wasn't a literal conversation, it was the way that things played out. Is this part of that conversation that you're referencing?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the only conversation that I've had with him.
Okay.
And it, I call it a conversation. I was shouting out stuff that he could hear, that I could try and impose some sort of psychological advantage for myself.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I'm lying on the ground for 3 hours, fully conscious. The last 15 minutes, I'm passing in and out of consciousness. But by that time, my mates had uh, got back to barracks, rekitted, regrouped, and then come out to where we are by helicopter and by land vehicle. And they made a decision to come in to get me. And, if I had to do a review of this incident, being the person that was injured, being the person that was lying on the ground and passing in and out of consciousness, so really, really close to death through a lack of blood left in my body, my observation would be that it was an illogical, unsafe decision for them to come in and try and rescue me at that stage. Part of their briefing was, we don't know whether Derek's dead or alive. You may be going in to pick up a body. He may have already expired. There's a very real chance you may be shot and injured. You may be shot and killed. Part of that briefing was, if you do get shot and injured, please stay close to the truck because that'll make it easy for us to get you out. a big ask, I think, but it was one of those considerations. So it was a very realistic um, concept that he was a danger. And they decided to come in. They only had 2 ballistic shields between 13 people, and they came in to rescue me. When they got to me, I was passing in and out of consciousness. They picked me up immediately, threw me into the back of the van, got me to the doctor, and the doctor and my team stood in direct line of fire for the doctor to stabilize me. And the doctor says that if he hadn't done that at that point, I was 30 seconds from death and I would not have survived. Um, so they again risked their lives to stabilize mine and give me the best chance of survival.
And people without any sort of tactical background don't realize, you see movies, unless maybe if you've seen like Saving Private Ryan, actually, this is a perfect example of that where,
Yeah,
these
yeah.
soldiers get shot and then people are getting picked off going out there to try and help him. Like you are taught to end the threat and get off the X before you do anything to render anyone aid. But I did with that, you mentioned your guys coming back. I know that you said the other half of your team was elsewhere and had to come in, but are you also saying that your fire team sized element there actually left the scene entire, they left, or this is the other crew, the other part of the crew
Oh,
comes
this
in?
is this is the other crew. So my
Oh, okay.
my team my team got pinned down. They wanted to come in and get me, but they got pinned down, and the video that's not available on YouTube shows them in a position where, and you would appreciate more than likely that when bullets are being fired towards you is a very different sound to when they're being fired away from you.
Because you
And
hear
this
the
is where the
crack.
guy yeah, you hear the crack rather than just a boom, boom, boom. And this is where the guy with the video camera keeping it operating was absolutely invaluable. So you can hear the sound of him just firing, and there's a boom, boom where he's firing away from you, and then there's a bang, bang as the bullets are getting closer and closer to you because it's now coming towards you. So it's boom, boom, bang, bang, and then you hear the crack because it's really close. And then you can hear the whiz that goes past their ears as those bullets come round. And what happened was that the guy that was shooting went up into the roof. He started shooting in a 360-degree arc because he couldn't see anybody from where he was sitting for the majority of the time. And he was just shooting in a 360-degree arc. And so when he was shooting away, it was boom, boom. And every time he got to you and there was that crack whiz, you may have just started trying to move. And then there's that crack whiz. And you go, oh, he knows where I am because he's firing my direction. So they felt like they were pinned down. Another reason that they felt like they were pinned down and he could see them was that um, the one of the guys went around to one of the neighbors' houses, and he started evacuating people and telling, go to the back of your houses, find a safe spot, because there's a shootout going on. And as he was at the front of that house, the shooter has looked through a ventilation brick in the ceiling, and that ventilation brick he could see out of. And he has shot through that ventilation brick at that other member of the team, and those bullets were dropping around his feet. Now, this is the only time that he was actually able to see someone, but because he was shooting out through there and those bullets were dropping around his feet, the next bullets that were fired, every time there was a crack whiz, then everyone's gone, oh, he knows where I am. He's shooting in my direction. So they
Yeah.
felt like they were pinned down, and I completely get it. I completely embrace it. Even, get your head around this. Even if I had died and been able to come back and done a review as to whether their performance was acceptable or not, I would fully support that decision they made to stay in cover because they felt threatened. No two ways
Well,
about it.
and without rifles, they were fucked. Like that was
Yeah, that's right.
poor planning, really. Like, I mean, you're kind of screwed there. And especially he's got a rifle, you don't. He can reach out and touch you, and you can't return
Yeah,
that
that's right.
favor.
Yep. Yep.
But so someone end up taking him out, or did he surrender?
I was on the ground for 3 hours from the time he shot me. The siege went on for 41 hours.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it's the longest siege ever in Australia. And the most number of rounds fired between an offender and police at that time. We've had a recent siege in Queensland where 2 police officers died and 3 offenders died. And I don't know how many rounds were fired in that, but it was a massive gun battle. So,
Jeez.
but for the time, 41 hours and 2,000 rounds of ammunition was a record. It's still a record in South Australia. Not that you want to, focus on those records, of course.
Yeah, bad records to hold, but
Yeah, that's right.
so, and you said he had like 8 mags. So what
Uh,
was the what's that?
so yeah, I'll just jump in there. Yeah, he had 8 mags, and he fired around about 1,500 rounds or whatever it was. He still had 3,000 rounds in the roof. So he was
Wow.
well prepared for a
Yeah.
battle. Yeah. So in the end, he was the only one left in the house. 7 minutes after I was shot, I've heard his wife screaming at him in the house. 7 minutes after I was shot, she has run out of the house carrying their 2 young children, a 2 and a 4-year-old. And so he is now left in the house by himself. So they put in negotiators and all sorts of stuff to try and get him to come out. But we had to go into another offensive action where we used a tractor to knock down part of the house to expose him to danger. And a short time after that, he surrendered. And we got him to court 2.5 years after the shooting. He was convicted, given 22 years jail, 18 years non-parole. And he appealed, won the appeal. 2.5 years later, we went back to court again. Conviction was upheld, penalty was upheld, and he appealed. It took 10 years to finalize it in the courts, but he got 22 years jail.
So he's out now.
He's out. For the last 8
That's
years, he's been walking
such
amongst
bullshit.
us.
That's
Yeah, absolutely. With absolutely
even
no contrition.
yeah, that's bullshit. And even fuck, man, he put his wife and kids in the middle of that too, like on top of
Yeah,
everything else.
yeah. Complete narcissist.
Wow. Has he, do you know what he's up to these days?
I'm not supposed to, because if victims
Okay.
know what
Yeah.
offenders are doing, there's always that chance of retribution, revenge.
Yeah.
But I went back to policing,
Okay.
and I was fully operational for all the way up until 2018. So as a victim, I'm not allowed to know what the offender is doing or where that offender lives. As a police officer, I had to know where he lived, so that if we got called to his house, we were pre-warned.
Yeah.
Right now, I was operational in the area where he was living. And so I was fully aware of where he was, what he was doing, up until I left the police.
Was there a tiny, tiny bit of you that was hoping you'd run into him?
Um, Not for the reasons you would expect. I would have found it interesting for interest's sake, and that's it.
Yeah.
There was, and I'll be really clear here, there was no want of revenge or retribution. This is talking about those 4 levels of responsibility that I now talk about. Whenever we want to do something, and this was join Star Group, go into that environment, before you actually make the choice and go in there, you've got to forecast what your choices are going to be, what your behaviors are going to be, what the possible consequences are going to be, both good and bad, and what the future after those consequences are going to look like. And we've got to do that really proactively. But once we do that, we can then take the next step of accepting responsibility for where we are at any particular time in our life.
And
Okay,
you did
so
sign up for that job and the
I
risks that
signed up.
come with it. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And I did it knowingly. 5 years before the shooting, I had a conversation with my wife, and I said, going in Star Group, very real chance I may be shot and injured. I may be shot and killed. If I die, what will your life look like? Now, this is a conversation that only about 1% of police have. And I would say it's only about 1% of military have with their wives as well. It's not that we aren't aware of it, but we don't sit down and have that conversation. If I die, what will your life look like?
Yeah.
Okay. And so I sat down with my wife and I had that conversation, and it was very serious as well as lighthearted. So, a little insight into that. Um, the reason I wanted to have this conversation is that I didn't want her going through life and thinking, oh my gosh, would Derrick have wanted me to stay single? Would he have wanted me to get married? And then feel guilty for that for the rest of her life. So I wanted to have this very clear, unambiguous conversation. If you decide to go on and get married, I fully support it. If you decide to stay single, I fully support it. But I did throw her a third option. And I said, and if you decide to build a little shrine in the corner and just worship me every day, I fully support that as well.
That one I
That
prefer. Yeah.
it wasn't the popular option though.
Well,
Um, but but then I went and had that conversation with myself as well. If I get shot, what do I want to do? How do I want to handle it? What does perfection look like? What does chaos look like? But then it's the future afterwards as well. And I said to my wife, if I get shot and I don't die, anything better than death is a bonus. And even if I have to spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair, I want you to know I'm making a decision to go in there, fully knowing what the consequences might be. I've got to take responsibility for that and then creating a life that I'm going to be happy with afterwards. And I would find a way to do that.
yeah. And
Um,
I mean, that's service, right? Like
yeah,
you are called to
absolutely.
something larger than yourself and willing to make the sacrifice.
Yeah. And as same as our military and police worldwide. When we go into those roles, the unfortunate thing is that most people are aware of those dangers, but very few actually talk about them. There's always the thought, oh, well, you'll be looked after, or you're smart enough, you'll work it out. Actually, it's a bit of a scary conversation. I don't really want to have it because it makes it too real. Whereas I think we've got to have these open, honest, confronting conversations about reality. And when we do that, it's like we said right, or you said right at the beginning, and I agreed with, we've got to own it. We've got to own our decisions and own our action and own the consequences, whether they're good or bad.
Well, I mean, in the military, those conversations definitely happen. I mean, they're just that shit is not ignored. It's a very real thing, and everyone's aware of it. Obviously, I've never had experience in the police, but I was an infantry marine, even though I didn't see combat. Like that's in everyone's minds, and you do talk about it, and it's going into things with intention like that. And yeah, especially for like you mentioned, your spouse who, she has secondhand experience, but she doesn't know. And that's going into that with
Yeah.
intention is very, very important. And it sounds like intention to you is a big part of what you do today and all of it's very clear that you're a speaker, the way that you even talk through your own story. So as we bring this all to a close, how about you tell everyone what you're up to today? You were a police officer still through 2018. Tell us everything that you got going on now and where people can find you.
Yeah, so I got approached to get onto the speaker circuit and tell my story. I actually avoided telling my story on the speaker circuit. Obviously, I'm very comfortable talking about it, but I didn't want to take money for the hero story when the heroes were actually the guys who saved me. But then the blood service came to me, and I used 24 units of blood in 7 hours. The body only holds 10 units. So the blood service said, would you like to say thank you to blood donors and encourage more blood donation? And I've gone, yeah, no problems. I can do that because it's not about me. I'm saying thank you. But then I found out there are a whole heap of messages behind it that I hadn't seen. And so what I do now is I talk about what I call human durability. And human durability is about going beyond resilience. Resilience is our ability to bounce back. But what I talk about is sustaining optimal performance. And optimal performance is the very best you can possibly do in a given circumstance, right? And that's accepting the fact that if I get shot, I'm not going to be a peak performer anymore. As much as Star Group and the military were all expected to be the best of the best all the time, I had to know that if I get shot, I can't be the best of the best. What do I need to do to sustain optimal performance? And I take this concept now and I take it into schools and I talk to kids in schools. I talk to hairdressers. I talk to CEOs. I talk to entrepreneurs. I talk to fighter pilots. And it's the same, sustaining optimal performance. And I've got several different models that I utilize for it. But everybody just says, wow, that just makes sense. I knew of this idea, but I've never actually heard it articulated. And the way I articulate it, it just makes sense to people. And it takes the panic, it takes the fear out of making decisions and taking action. In fact, there are two levels of comfort that I describe. And one level of comfort is, wow, there's a really scary situation, but I've got the resources, I've got the finance, I've got the support, I've got the team. Actually, even if the worst happens, we can handle it. And that level of comfort allows you to go forward boldly, courageously, and make decisions, take action that you wouldn't if you were nervous and you weren't sure.
When
The
you're
second
prepared.
level, yeah, when you're prepared, absolutely. And you know you're prepared rather than just hoping you're prepared. And there's a big difference between knowing and hoping. But the second level of comfort is you actually have that open, honest, confronting conversation. And you go, you know something, I haven't got the team, or I haven't got the support of my partner, or we haven't got the finances. So I'm actually going to make a conscious decision not to go and take that action, take that risk, whatever it might be. But you do it comfortably, knowing that you're able to articulate the reasons behind it rather than just going, it doesn't feel right. I'm not sure, so we won't. But when you're able to articulate the reasons, you are stepping up as a leader, and people around you will completely respect you because they'll be able to go, I can see the decision making process and that all makes sense, rather than what's that person scared of? Why are they not, taking that move? I would, but when we understand the reasoning, we become more comfortable with it. And so I these days I travel the world. I'm very fortunate. I've been to the US 4 times, and I'm potentially coming back there before June this year, to be on the speaking circuit over there, speaking at companies, running half-day workshops, full-day workshops. But I'll speak and open a conference or close a conference with some really salient mindset frameworks to give people more sense of optimism about the future.
Oh, well, that's gonna fly up, but that's coming right around the corner. This will come out in May, so it'll be right before that.
Oh, sensational.
Where can people find you and get in contact? And do you know where
Yeah.
you're gonna be?
When I come to the US, not at this stage.
Okay.
I'll certainly be landing into either um, Los Angeles or San Diego.
Okay.
Um, and from there, I just love traveling. So if somebody wants me on the other side, I'm coming on the other side. If somebody wants me in the middle, I'm there. You want
All
me up in
right.
Canada, I'm there too. And it is the bonus of the job that I do these days. And people say, oh, don't you get tired? Don't you need holidays? I had a 90-minute gig in San Jose, California. That 90-minute gig took me 8 days to do because there was surfing, there was basketball, there was convertible Mustangs, there was all sorts of tours on. So, I love putting a holiday in on it. So I'll go wherever people want me. But I'm very, very fortunate that I'm still talking about something I am very passionate about. And what I love to see is that light go on behind people's eyes and they go, oh, I can imagine that. I can see that working for me, and then them believing a little bit more in themselves and being prepared to either take courageous decisions and go boldly forwards, or actually feel comfortable to say, I can understand now why I want to say no.
Yeah. These days, I would just love to see a light go on.
Yeah, as I was saying it, and as I say, I ride tandems with vision impaired people on the back, and we
Yeah.
have these conversations all the time. And you go, oh, I've got to choose my words carefully here.
No,
Um,
you don't, man. That's my favorite part is like when people drop the act of walking on eggshells around me. It's like when I can get other
yeah,
people to
yeah,
start cracking blind jokes at me, that's when I know, like, all right, we've crossed the threshold. So,
yeah,
but
absolutely. Well, in the same context, people say things around me, and they go, "Oh, we could just shoot that person." Oh, Derek, I'm sorry about that. But my mother's favorite saying before the shooting was, Derrick, if you, and this is growing up as a child and all the way through until my mum passed 6 years ago, all the way through, she would say, Derrick, if you do X, Y, Z and upset me, I'm going to shoot you. And even after the shooting, she did not change. She said, I'll shoot you. And then I was able to say, Mum, they've tried that. It had no effect. Find something else.
I love that. You have to be able to find comedy in this stuff, man. You really do. I mean, that is it's such a big coping skill with things, but you seem
Yeah, it is,
pretty
but
good,
but
please.
you've still got to acknowledge the seriousness as well at the appropriate time. Okay,
Yeah.
my kids and I are very light-hearted about it without being dismissive about the seriousness at the appropriate time too.
Yeah.
So when you can balance those two, it's a really great environment.
Yeah. Where's Tell everyone your
But
website,
yeah, so
how they can get in
yeah, my
contact.
apologies. Website is just derrickmcmanus.com. Make sure you spell Derrick right. So go to those notes. But you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. And yes, I am about to go onto TikTok too, because that's what they tell me that most traffic is on the internet for marketing, these sorts of services. But if people want to just ring me up or send me an email and say, hey, listen, I've got this um, event happening. Do you think you'd be appropriate for it? And I'm happy to have those discussions. In fact, if you Google on YouTube, Derrick McManus Sky Deck, SKY Deck, DECK. I was doing a 10-minute networking event, and I was speaking for 10 minutes. And it was on what the area was Skydeck. And so if you Google Derrick McManus Skydeck, you will get 8 minutes of what people have described as stand-up comedy about me being shot 14 times. So
All right. I'm gonna have to go
yeah,
check that out.
yeah,
But
let me tell you, it's but so it can be like, in fact, Postmasters asked me in to talk at their comedy event. So it's lighthearted, it's
yeah.
entertaining. People piss themselves laughing at being shot 14 times, but no matter where I talk or when I talk, there are always salient points about what we can do to change our lives, become more bold, more courageous, more confident in our lives. And as I'm saying this, I'm hitting my hand onto one hand onto the other, making those points.
Yeah.
Um, so I absolutely love it, and I can have lighthearted, I can have really deep and meaningful. I have people crying with emotion in some of the stories that I tell, particularly about my interactions with my children. But always salient points that come out of every one of those.
Awesome, man. And I will have links to all those things in the show notes. I know you sent them to me beforehand. They will be
Yeah.
in here. And I just wanted to thank you again for taking that time, but also just again being owning these things and being able to discuss it all because people will learn from this and it's a hell of a story on top of everything else. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, yeah, thank you, Dak, and I appreciate that. And I'd like to thank you for the short conversation we had about your situation, your circumstances that we had before the show opened too. So I'd like to thank you for your service and wish you all the best for the future as well. You're really coming at life from a very different perspective from a person who has been through what you have been through. So congratulations on that too.
Yeah, thanks, man. And thanks everyone at home for listening to another episode of Going In Blind. Remember, rate, review, and follow the show wherever you listened, and go check out Derek's links in the show notes. See you next week.